for 10 years I didn't work out. It was literally a bodybuilder came into my office, pinched my love handle and said, "Boy, you're getting soft."
You were like, what?
It's like, dang, man. He goes, "Don't worry though, I can help you." And so he told me where to show up. But then when I wobbled out of his training studio, he goes, "By the way, if you're going to come back tomorrow," and notice he said if, he opened the door, but he put an if there. It's a condition, right? If you're going to train like me, you're going to have to eat like me, which means he was setting me up for the next piece. Good day, everybody. I hope everybody's doing stupendous. No, not stupendous. It's fabulous. It is Fabulous Friday for me today, and I hope wherever you're at, you're feeling just amazing. And on the Chapa Wellness Show, I'm always excited to bring you guys just talent, special people that are making an impact in the world as we know it, a world that is desperately needing better health. And so today, I know you can't applaud, so I want y'all to pretend to do a golf clap, a little round of applause for my good friend. My wife and I love this gal. She's a sweetheart. Her name is Chase Williams. She is a fitness and nutrition coach, and she is making a difference in our community and beyond. So, tell us who you are, what you do, why you do it.
Oh, for sure. So I am a fitness and nutrition coach, like you said. I've been in the fitness industry for long time. I can't all the year. Every time a year goes by, another year is added, and you're like, wait, what number am I at? So 12, 13 years, give or take. I actually,
awesome.
I came from gymnastics and cheer. So I started coaching at 15. And as I progressed, it was like, okay, coaching and now fitness coaching and then one-on-one training. And it kind of just progressed. And then, 2020 hit, life throws you through a loop and you're like, oh, wait, I've got to do some more elaborate stuff. And so that kind of brought me into a little bit more of the coaching online, taking it a little bit more personal, deeper level, working with people on not just as a whole instead of, hey, get your workout in, and so it kind of shifted and how I supported them and walking through their journey. So
man, I'm just going to ask a question so I don't forget it because something you just said, how do you make coaching more than, hey, just go get it done? Because it isn't hard, right? Keep it simple, stupid. That's a good model still, yes. I think. Yep. And yet we are not keeping it simple and we're not getting it done. So how do you just make coaching more than just simply what it sounds like?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple different things to kind of unpack when it comes to coaching, because coaching, and that's kind of what made me shift from hey, just get your workout in, right? It's deeper than that. And there's a lot of habit and mindset that has to shift and change. And I'm not a mindset expert, right? But I do know that there is some significance to breaking it down into the keep it stupid simple, right? Yeah. Into the very fundamental basics and then progress from there. Yeah. And I think a lot of programs or a lot of things out there, especially in the fitness weight loss space, it's do 50 million things to make it happen, right? And I noticed that a lot of people will go all in and then feel like a failure because they didn't get to the fundamental stuff. And that's really kind of why when 2020 hit and we went through some of those big COVID changes and your eyeballs are
life
whoa,
altering.
Correct. And I'm so thankful for that space. And as I think about how people develop, and I think about how I mostly work with, I work with moms and I work with women, and I really brought it back into that fundamental. We have to work on these things to make them lifelong changes before we progress into doing all these little bit more complicated, more advanced things, or methods, or,
Do you find that people think that it's so easy that they don't need a coach?
So I actually was just having this conversation with a client that she's moving into my next level program. And I was explaining to her, hey, she's lost 24 inches over the last 6 months. She's done a really amazing job. And I just had this conversation with her about, hey, it's not time to stop. We just touched the surface on some of these fundamental things. If you continue to want to do this on your own, that's fine. And I hope that you have the tools that you need to continue to be successful.
Yeah, for sure.
But like they only did it for a short period of time. And when you don't have a little bit of that accountability or someone to hold you to a higher standard, you then start to like deviate and go back into like these old habits and these old processes and this old way of thinking. Because
I thought you said you weren't a mindset coach.
I know, like
so that is totally mindset, and it is the psychology
Yes.
of the mind does play on you. And so metabolism wise, I've always found like there's this thing called a metabolic set point. So if a person has a history of being overweight, they will lose 20 pounds. Their body actually doesn't like that. And it wants to go back to whatever metabolic set point they were set at 250 or, 215 or whatever the big number is for them. And they struggle. And I remember back in my own journey, I was 55 pounds overweight, and I've had a weight problem, if you will, my entire life. And I have always had to work at it. I always tell people, for every 100 people 99 have to work at it. There's always one that you want to thump in the skull and be like, you don't have to do nothing. You have a six pack. You don't even deserve. You don't even know what you've got. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
And so, but there is a bit of a not just metabolic reset, that mindset of I'm going to get up and do this today.
Yeah, it's a hardcore discipline for sure. And I think too that a lot of that disconnect of like you don't realize so many things in your brain are wired to go one direction until you fully repeat that change.
Why? And this is, seemingly a setup question, right? It should be very teed up easy, but it's not. Like, what is it about exercise that is so right and so fundamental?
We have so many. There's so many different directions we could take in that space. But basically, and I think that's what is hard is because, like, we all know we should go move well, or we should move. We should, walk.
I have a Dr. Chapa-ism that says, if the dude don't move, the dude don't groove.
Yeah.
So we got to make sure we are moving and grooving. But yet, obvious, but we don't.
We don't. Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of things to kind of unpack that comes to our culture, right? Like why people don't move. And then it's also another thing is like, why do we not prioritize it? Because it's not just like, oh, you need to move, right? Like a checklist, but people don't have the discipline or the like I have this conversation with my husband all the time. I'm like, well, it's been 2 years, dude. Like, and we're polar opposite people. Like, I'm like, hey, so you want to go on a walk with us? He's like, well, I got to do the dishes, or I got to do, like, there's always something. And a lot of women carry that heavy load and concerns to the household. And so when you're asking, like, why don't people move more? And it's because other things are a higher priority.
That's right.
And if it's you have to shift. You have to, like, make movement, and your nutrition and the food and the quality and all that stuff, like, it has to become a priority.
Yeah, Dash and I were talking the other day about the important versus the urgent, right? So the dishes are urgent, right? Your spirit life is important and frankly urgent. But what happens is important things like exercising, moving and grooving and doing what we need to do every day as a discipline, it gets pushed to the side. And I wonder, is it because we don't know how? I've talked to a lot of people. They don't go to the gym because they don't know how to. And I look back and I remember my fitness journey. I thought I knew what I knew. I thought I knew stuff. And I even used to be a trainer thinking I knew stuff until I met a bodybuilder. And he showed me.
Yes.
He learned me something.
Yeah. But that's a journey.
Yes, 100%.
And I just had this conversation with someone else the other day where it's not about like, oh, this short term, this is what I'm going to do right now. Because even thinking back, I graduated, I just celebrated my 20-year high school reunion and went back to our old high school. And I've been in athletics all through, middle school to high school. And then
as a career.
Yeah. And I'm like, you basically, and it's when I was doing cheerleading, like some of the conditioning.
Okay, so that's a good question. So watch this. So if a mom is listening, which I know they are, because again, women make 100% of the health decisions for the family. I used to say 90%, but I'm convinced it's more than that. But they're going to say this to you. They're going to say, well, Chase, that's great for you. Your whole life you've done this and you've taken, I'm sorry to make fun. I'm not like actually my girly voice.
No, I love it.
Girly
Make fun
voice
of me.
came out,
Let's go.
And it's
go.
like, but you've been doing this your whole life and there's no way that I could do that. And I just don't have time. And I mean, whatever.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, for you, how do you bridge you've been doing it your whole life, this is new to me, and you're right, you are more than you realize, you are a psych coach in the fact that you are retraining the brain to do let's say challenging things, not hard
because
things.
it's just different than what you've always done.
Yeah.
And I think too, I take me out of the equation. It's the client. You know what I mean? And I think too, like, even though people can look at, and they've even made comments with me before. Like I've been in spaces where they're like, "Oh, don't look at what I'm eating." And I'm like, "That's your decision.
Yeah, it's your
like,
life,
my
your
decision
health,
is
your
totally,
choice.
That's your choice, and if that's your decision and what you want to put in your body."
The only person, I tell patients that too. Like I say, guys, if you quit, the only person that loses is you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can continue to give you ideas. I can inspire you. I can coach you. I can develop you. I can give you the resources and the tools. But until you say, put it in drive, it ain't happening.
Right. And take the action behind all of it. And I think too, like when you mentioned like, "Oh, well, you have done this for so long," or whatever, but thinking back on that journey, like it's a journey. It is a lifelong thing that you are going to continue learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that frustrates me, especially in the fitness industry, where they're like an 8-week this, a 12-week that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yes, it's good to have timelines of stuff, but like, I'm just sick of like, I personally, like in the fitness industry, I get sick of people talking at it like there's an end line.
Yeah, there's not.
There's not. Like you have to continue working at it. You have to continue progressing. Like you're going to go through phases. Like I went through like a 5-year endurance streak, and I like looking back, I'm like, when I first started, and it's weird, like how you think through the psychology of some of this stuff. Like the whole reason I started running is because I wanted to be super tiny and lean and skinny, like some of the marathon runners.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well then I just run.
That's right.
Well, to be honest, I didn't lose any weight. I actually like kind of stayed a little fluffy, and like it wasn't the body composition I was even looking for. And then you add a couple of kids, like going running now with 3 kids, like you just can't, like it's just
very
different.
difficult. Yeah.
It's a little bit more difficult because especially marathon training. And I'm like, I don't have 6 hours on a Saturday to go run anymore. Like,
that wholly opens up a whole new can
that's a
of
whole
worms.
thing. Yeah, endurance training is a whole.
Well, not only that, but just like that whole concept of prioritization of the time word, right?
For sure.
And we don't want to do it. We only do what we know how to do, not what we want to do.
Yeah.
And how much you think it is like fear driven that people, what do you think the hiccup is for people not willing to get into that space?
Well, I think again, bringing it back to there's other things that are more of a priority. Like if you think of a Saturday morning right now, like a lot of people are at the baseball fields doing, and it depends on your kid's season, like where you're at in their life, right? Like for me, I have like little people, right? They're under 10, like 3 kids under 10. And so a 6-hour run on a Saturday doesn't fit my life where it is right now. And again, like I still have things that work for me in my space and how things are like what's going on in my world. And I think for women, you have to like navigate what's going on and like figure out where it does fit. And if it is 3 or 4 days a week, like 3 days is better than no days. Well, and 2 days is better than no days, right?
You just set this up because my wife just sent me this yesterday that says from the News and Health, the National Institute of Health.gov website, it says, don't just sit there, okay? And so the NIH funded a study by Matthews and colleagues found that extended periods of sitting might take a toll on your lifespan. So they say that sitting is essentially the new smoking, right? So now, but what I found interesting is the decade-long study. So this isn't like a little bitty study. This is 240,000 adults, right? Even those who were exercising a lot, 7 or more hours per week, and so I don't know if that's a lot or little, according to them. But
well, and it also depends on what their exercising was.
Well,
right?
Yeah, for sure. So there's variables that I get we don't have, and they did have it in the actual article. I just kind of summed it. Or more hours, 7 hours or more a week, had an elevated risk of death from all causes. Or from cardiovascular disease. So if they watch a lot amount of TV, more than 7 hours per day, which that sounds excessive, says Matthew, it suggests that a substantial amount of exercise may not always protect the adverse effects of prolonged sitting. So That's a weird thought,
That's
right?
well, but if you think about it, even though they're not just sitting there, they might just be sitting there watching TV, or they're sitting there at the computer working. Like more than like you think about the average working person right
Is
now
sitting behind a desk.
sitting behind a desk
For 7 hours. So there you go. So you're right. So it's not just TV watching.
It's not just TV watching. But then what they do is they go and sit at their kids' practice, or then they go home and they watch a couple of hours of sitcoms, or what sitcoms do we call it that anymore?
I don't know.
Or do we stream it?
The programs.
Programs?
Yeah, they're still
I
programming.
don't know. I haven't said sitcoms in forever, and it just came out.
Cool.
And I was
That's
like,
so rad. Well, no, think about it. They are programs because they're programming you to sit down and watch their show.
Oh, true. Okay.
And but no, you're 100% accurate. Like we sit a lot. Look, we're sitting.
Oh, for sure.
And so it is easy to find yourself sitting day in and day out. And so essentially what it's saying is, don't just sit there.
Yeah.
And so if we're talking about busy moms, and not even busy moms, busy wives.
Yeah.
You guys, I mean, my wife is running the streets. And what are some just practical things to maybe combat that? Again, I didn't even realize how cool that study was until we just kind of opened it up, is sitting is happening all
the time.
day for folks. I mean, when I read it this morning to my wife, I go, poor truck drivers. My brain went straight to truck drivers for some reason, because I mean they're like stressed on the road and right on. Mm-hmm. And so what are some practical things people could do to be more functionally fit, movement oriented?
I love it. So I think the biggest thing here is it's squeezing it in. You have to be a little bit more, one, you got to make it a priority. So if you are a more sedentary job, or if you have a more sedentary job, you have to be very intentional about how you are going to move. Right? So you got to make sure you've got a few days a week that you are moving, number one. And then on top of that, I share this with, obviously clients as well, but like the best thing you can do is, instead of just walking and going to the bathroom the short way, like go the long way. Yeah. Right? And setting that timer, like maybe every time you get into a little like brain funk, or after like an hour long meeting, like go do a lap. You know what I mean? Like go move a little bit. It doesn't have to be hardcore.
It's funny you say that. I remember when I was in college, in between classes, I'd go walk the building twice, 2 perimeters. Mm-hmm. One time I was like really stressed out, so I was like 7 times around like Jericho, blowing my trumpet so the walls would come tumbling down. Yes. I was going for it, man. And I get it. I did all 7, and I was late back to class, but it felt good.
Good, yeah.
Because you had to.
You're re-energized.
That's right.
Right? Like
then you can learn. Yeah. Then you can focus.
I know. Yeah, your brain starts soaking in all the stuff because you moved around. You got your blood flowing. Yeah, right? Like
for sure.
It's so good. And I think that, another thing, I was sitting in the car the other day with my girls, and I got behind this car, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're literally, and I'm telling this to my kids because I want them to recognize, I'm like, y'all, we are waiting right now behind this person because they're waiting on a car to park in this spot. I think we're at 8.
That's super close or something.
Oh, to a very close spot. And I, as soon as this person moved and they got into their parking spot, I was explaining to the girls, I'm like, hey, the cool thing is we've got legs and we've got body parts and we can like move and actually walk the distance. And I said, so we're going to go park back here. And those are things that like, I think we miss, right? Yes. Like, hey, just park in the back. One, I don't like our car getting dinged. That's one thing. But also I'm like, I'm going to make my kids walk. We're going to hold hands, going to walk a little bit further than needed. And there's so many simple little things that you can implement. But again, you have to be aware. And if you're unaware, like that's where it starts.
It's almost like you have to make a choice the night before the morning of, you have to know that you're going to do some things today to stay active through the day.
Correct.
And so if you're a truck driver, I've seen videos where people do truck driver workouts, and they're like 10 minutes of intense.
I love it.
And that high intensity interval training is a powerful tool if that's what your life can revolve around. Mm-hmm. But it's your life, your health, your choice. And I think that too often we settle. And I know sometimes, like, I'll run a hard day, and I'm thankful. One of my 3 requirements, and this must be just all God ordained. I mean, Proverbs 3:5-6 says, like, you trust in the Lord with all your heart, you lean not on your understanding, and all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. Right? Check this out. 3 requirements for a job. Because I thought I wanted to be a banker like my brother. All right? No, I don't want to be a banker. When I worked in the bank, I figured out I want a standing job, something that keeps me on my feet. I need something that it involves me working with people every day, and something that is unique in ever evolving and changing, not rudimentary, same thing. Did God ever deliver that?
Oh, he's like, here's 50 million things that you get to figure out and that you get to learn from
every day. And stand. So I literally stand all day long, walking around, pacing around, squatting down, demonstrating things to people. But how blessed am I that that's my job? How do we get people to recognize, man, I know you're busy. I know you got this. And remember, busy just means being under Satan's yoke, right? So you don't want to be under that anyway. How do we get that mindset shift over to, I can do this, I can make a change, I can be more proactive in taking care of me?
Number one, it takes the person. I think it takes the person getting to a point where they're like, they get hit emotionally, something life-altering somewhat happens, or some deep conversation happens for them to say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm over it. I'm not doing this anymore, and actually take that next step into shifting. I also believe that the more this is a conversation, the more that we talk about it, the more that we share, and the more we educate, the more that people have the right tools to make a decision for themselves, right? Because you can't, I can't make my kids want to run. Yeah. I can't make, you cannot make people do something.
I've asked my wife to train with me, just like you've asked your hubby to walk with you. I've asked, I asked my kids, and we can only lead and be the lead learner. And so I've come to the realization that they will one day. I mean, they'll at least know. Like if something happens in their health, they'll come to me because they know consistency he was. And like you were talking about what works in your life and then the pattern of accountability and things. Had I don't think for 10 years I didn't work out. It was literally a bodybuilder came into my office, pinched my love handle and said, "Boy, you're getting soft."
You were like, what?
It's like, dang, man. He goes, "Don't worry though, I can help you." And so he told me where to show up. But then when I wobbled out of his training studio, he goes, "By the way, if you're going to come back tomorrow," and notice he said if, he opened the door, but he put an if there. It's a condition, right? If you're going to train like me, you're going to have to eat like me, which means he was setting me up for the next piece, right? And then that turned into the next brutal, workout, and then the next and the next. And many years later, here we are still training. I'm not doing bodybuilding. I have no interest in that. But I enjoyed the discipline of it, the learning of it, the creativity of it, and the mind-muscle connection of it. I fell in love with that. What happens when people don't fall in love with it? How do you still help them understand, dude, this ain't your passion, but you've got to do it?
Yeah, you got to do it. Well, I think that brings it back to, you have to enjoy, like you mentioned a second ago, like bodybuilding isn't for like what I'm interested in right now. And a lot of people will see when they start their like me, when I was like, oh, I'm going to be skinny because I do marathon training. Like you have to love what you're doing. Number one, you have to really enjoy it. And my mindset has shifted through the years, as I continue educating myself as, being in the fitness industry, right? Like I think about, okay, what do I ultimately want? I personally want to create change, and I want people to love what they're doing. I want people to be healthy, and I want them to be the lead learner in their homes and to set an example that their kids can follow suit. Because when it comes, when I think back on generations, the whole reason I love cheer and coaching, it tears me up right now, just thinking about it. But
it's awesome.
Yeah, but I knew that I wasn't going to make that impact with those kids because I only saw them a few hours a week.
And mom and dad make the food choices.
And mom and dad, yeah.
Well, mom makes the food choices.
A lot of the time it's mostly mom. And so I was like, there has to be, and I know when God opened my eyes during, COVID year 2020, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do more. He gave me tools that I know that I can lead, because people do see me as mom and they're like, how do you do it all? And I'm like, well,
one day at a time.
Yeah. I'm like, it is one day at a time, but it also is, I know as a mom, I want to be the one that sets that example for them. And I know that other women too, when they're going to die for their kids, right? I would do anything to protect my kids.
So if that's the case, right? You nailed it. You pitched it to me. If you're willing to die for your children, then take care of you so that you can take care of them. And because if you are sick, broken, and not your best, your ability to be a protector or to be a lover or be a caregiver or be a whatever God has you doing in that season will never happen.
Yeah.
And that's wow factor. Okay. So food. What do you do? Like, we know exercise is a part of it, and we just discussed, I think, pretty good that, I mean, there's a need that isn't being met. So I'm glad that you are showing all moms the importance of valuing self, the importance of making the decision, even if you don't want to, you got to, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your marriage, for the sake of your spirit growth. I mean, it's all important, right? It's the journey, as you said.
Sure.
The food thing. How do you get these people to see food as a necessary, and but I'm working out, I can go drink the margaritas, I can go sit, have the enchiladas, I can go hit the fast food joint. How do you get them past that mindset? Because that's you said you wanted a psychology coach, but
I'm about to dive in. Here we go. Yeah. So a lot of this is, there is so many things that we had been conditioned growing up, right? And there's a lot of reframing, like as a coach, there's a lot of reframing I do when I do work with clients, and a lot of things like trying to educate around reframing, like how you say things, how you speak about things, what version of it comes out of your mouth. And I'm like, not only are you saying it, how many times a day are you thinking that?
Yeah, for sure.
And if you don't start reframing those phrases, things like, oh, if I work out, I can drink the margaritas. Well,
they make working out like a condition.
Correct. So that's there's that connection too, because I know we're kind of shifting into like the nutrition space, but they do, like, there's a lot of phrases out there like, oh, go work out so you can get this, and using movement, like the decreasing, right? Like getting in that deficit, like they use that as almost like a crutch, like, oh, I worked out, now I can do whatever. Or like, oh, well, I ate good yesterday, or I had a salad for lunch, or right? Like they make these conditions, and they have these, I can't even think, I'm trying to think of a phrase like someone uses like on a common, a common phrase that comes out of their mouth. But I see it all the time. Like I see it on Instagram. I see it in like a couple of,
food drives everything. I mean,
yes.
He who controls the food controls the world. So
right.
Marketing is just driven to help you buy whatever is being sold, but food is a billion-dollar industry.
It's nuts.
And we're not selling food though. I mean, I always used to make the joke, like, if you got to go to a health food store for health food, then what's at the grocery store? And I get it, I know, but that's where all the gluten-free things were, and the dairy-free things were, and the processed less things were. Mm-hmm. Somebody literally just texted me this thing: if God didn't grow it or God didn't make it, don't eat it.
That's what I say.
Oh, well, then somebody literally just texted that to me.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that is totally what I say. Because I say, hey, and I try and educate, like because I think a lot of people think,
it wasn't you. You didn't text it to me.
Are you sure?
It was a man, actually.
Okay.
Believe it or not, it was a man, and
Does he follow me on Instagram?
No, I don't. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. If he doesn't,
no, God makes it. We
this.
consume it, is what I say. Yeah, sure.
That's good. That's it. Darn near.
Because I think it simplifies it.
Yeah.
Again, bringing it back to like, how can we make change? How can we make it?
It tastes so good to eat Skittles and gummy bears.
Oh, I'm sure.
I had a lady.
But once you stop though, like it really doesn't taste that good.
No, they don't. It's literally plastic, rubber, and dye
weird.
and sugar.
Yes.
And so, but there is a component of like helping people not be habitual, right? I mean, because as you said earlier, I mean, we are very creatures of habit. So we eat the same things. The same 11 meals repeated over and over again. And you're trying to get them to move and to make lifestyle change. That's pretty intense.
Yeah. And it's not, and I think that's too where you start to do one thing at a time. Like it becomes a little bit easier. But the nutrition space is like, we only have to, like, there has to be like the simplicity of it where it like bring it back a little bit, like get to God made it, we consume it. Mm-hmm. Like how simple is that phrase to where then you're like looking at food. Well, did God make this? And my kids like to be like, oh, well, God made man and man made this. And I'm like, stop it.
Well, and it's true. Man is creative as God was,
yes.
But unfortunately, with the food game, food can absolutely, if you are eating make-believe food, I always like to say, then the best you'll ever have is make-believe health. And we got to get our kids, because they have several formative years where if we train them to eat garbage, and that's what we're winning them to. And they don't know any better because we are either, quote unquote, too busy, or we are not paying attention, or whatever. And we have to help them see that if God didn't make it, we should not consume it.
Well, and I think when it comes to the kid stuff, the conversations, like if you're not having conversations about nutrition and food and movement, like when are they gonna learn it? They're gonna like grow up and have to like figure it out on their own. When I'm like, you have those, so many years when they're in that stage of like sponges.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what are you actually leading with? Like being the lead learner in the family, like what are you leading with, and how are you leading them, and what habits and routines are you teaching your children to do? Because that's basically what you're doing. And so I think that, when you think about how you're educating your children, like they soak it all in.
Yeah.
No matter what you say, it's your actions, it's your habits, it's your, everything you do in and out. And it also is, what are you saying about food? Because I am totally anti good and bad food. I am anti finish your plate. Like there's a lot of psychological things that I'm like, I'm not doing that to my children. Like,
That's
hey,
good.
Let's learn what this food does. Let's
Now,
learn why this is a...
Where did you make that distinction? Like, when did you realize you shouldn't finish the plate, for example?
Yeah. Personal experiences. Growing up, I had a stepdad that was very adamant on, like, I remember crying at the dinner table.
Because you had to finish.
Because I had to finish my food.
It was going to be no good for you.
Oh, and I knew that.
Well,
and
it might have been good for you, but you weren't going to.
No, it was like a hot dog.
Yeah.
I had to finish a hot dog.
Oh,
no, it was, no. And a Fruit Loops was one of them too. Like he made me eat soggy Fruit Loops. To this day, someone puts Fruit Loops out, I'm like, what? I mean, we don't bring that kind of stuff into our home, but it really is, it's that deeper conversation and making sure that how you speak about food, how you speak about movement, how you speak. I had 3 girls. How you speak about your body, what you show, like, is nuts. And so it really boils down to, like, what do you want to teach your kids? Mm-hmm. What legacy are you leaving on the planet?
That's right.
So
if you had to leave, no, and I'm wiggling too, because I mean, these are good, passionate, topics, because we're trying to make change. We're trying to help people see the value of choosing themselves so they can be better for the people that love them, so that they can be good examples. We all need to be educated. If you had to leave our audience with movement nugget and a food nugget, what would you want them to really grasp?
I think I would want them to know that just start. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect out of the gate. You don't have to like throw everything away in your pantry.
So you mean if they don't have the right form exactly?
Yeah, no. I would just encourage them to just start, just to do something. And I always say, make the next best decision.
There you go.
Next best decision. It doesn't, again.
It's almost interesting when if you say something like that, make the next best decision, you know at your heart level if eating, mm-hmm. smoking, mm-hmm. Sitting for too long is a good continuous decision. But it's an intentional thought. That's good.
For sure. And it really is, because a lot of people think they have to go all in, or it's not, or it has to be 100%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's not true. It really is just do a little bit at a time, because it is a journey.
So guys, for your health journey, just start. I think we could literally sum the whole thing up. Whether you just start a new diet plan, whether you start a walking plan, when you start a movement plan, start a good, better thinking plan. These are ways that we want to bring health and wellness to the community. So we are thrilled that Chase was with us today. How do they, what's your website? How do they find out?
Sure. Chase Lynn, Lynn, Williams.com, or Chase Lynn 252 on Instagram.
Oh, so you put videos and stuff up?
Yeah. I throw out content all the time.
That's good.
I love it.
So, and guys, that's another cool thing about today's technology is wherever you're at, you can become her friend, and you can reach out to her. And this is the closest that maybe I can get to a personal introduction for you to find value in your own health and finding a coach that would resonate with you. And I pray that you do. I hope you make that connection. Even if you don't start like her plan today, but you make a friend today. because sooner or later, her positivity, her energy, her influence will begin to rub off on you. You are a product of the 5 people that you hang around, the 5 podcasts you're tuning into, the 5 books you're reading. So make sure you're putting quality content in, because garbage in, garbage out.
No, for sure.
And so I just want to say thank you, Chase, for being with us today. I'm so glad that you guys are on the Dr. Chapa Wellness Show.
Yes.
And I want y'all more to be sharing our message with people. We are so excited to bring health and wellness to the community. So God bless you guys today. Rock on and take care of yourselves.